The observation deck of Research Station Apollon smelled like recycled air and midnight coffee. Rebecca Cale stood with her tool kit slung over one shoulder, watching the test chamber through reinforced glass. Another routine calibration check. Another late shift. Another day of keeping the galaxy's most advanced research facility from falling apart. She didn't notice Commander Vexith until he spoke. "Technician Cale, you were in testing chamber 7 this afternoon." Rebecca turned. The Drexian commander stood with 4 of his upper appendages crossed, never a good sign. Behind him, Lieutenant Corin and Dr. Millanth watched her with expressions she couldn't quite read. "Yes, sir. Sensor calibration at 1400 hours, logged and signed off." "And you touched the test sample?" Rebecca blinked. "The Vidian steel, maybe. I was checking the temperature sensors. My hand might have brushed it." Vexith's primary eyes narrowed. "Might have." "Sir, with respect, I touch a lot of equipment. It's kind of my job." Millanth stepped forward, the Rithian metallurgist's gill slits fluttering. "The sample shattered 22 seconds after you left the chamber." The words didn't make sense. Rebecca repeated them in her head, trying to find the logic. "Vidian steel doesn't shatter. That's the whole point of Vidian steel." "We're aware," Corin said dryly. "Then your test was wrong. Pressure calibration, atmospheric contamination, molecular degradation." 17 analyses, Vexith interrupted. 3 separate calibration teams, 4 different methodologies. The equipment is not faulty. The sample showed no structural compromise prior to failure. The only variable was you. Rebecca felt something cold settle in her stomach. "You think I sabotaged it?" "I think something happened that shouldn't be possible, and you were there when it did." She wanted to laugh. She wanted to point out how insane this sounded. But these weren't her fellow human crew members who might appreciate the absurdity. These were senior officers from species who took protocol very, very seriously. "I'd like to see the footage," she said quietly. Millanth pulled up the security recording. Rebecca watched herself enter the chamber, run the scanner, pause at the test rig. Her hand reached out, just fingertips, barely a second, and she muttered something under her breath. "What did you say?" Vexith asked. The audio isolated. Her own voice emerged, tiny but clear. Cold." That was it, her entire crime, touching metal and commenting on its temperature. 22 seconds later, the galaxy's strongest alloy exploded like glass. "This is impossible," Rebecca whispered. "Yes," Vexith agreed. "Which is why we need to understand what happened. You're not being accused, Technician Cale, but you are being investigated." The word hung in the air between them. Investigated. Not arrested, not confined, but close enough to make her pulse quicken. "Am I dismissed from duty?" "Not yet, but you're restricted to supervised areas until we have answers." Rebecca nodded slowly. Around them, the station continued its endless routine. Humans working alongside 40 other species, maintaining systems, conducting research, living their lives. She'd been here 3 years. She'd never felt out of place before. Now, watching the commanders watch her, she wondered if that was about to change. "Understood, sir." Vexith's expression softened slightly. "This isn't personal, we just need to know why." But as Rebecca left the observation deck, escorted by a security officer who kept a careful distance, she couldn't shake the feeling that why was about to become everyone's least favorite question. Behind her, through the glass, fragments of impossible metal glittered under harsh lighting. All because someone had found them cold. Dr. Thess arrived on Station Apollon 3 days later, and Rebecca knew immediately that things were about to get worse. The Quarren xenobiologist moved through the corridors like she owned them, her breathing apparatus clicking with what might have been amusement. When species who laughed at funerals showed up to study you, it rarely ended well. Rebecca sat in Lab 7, her 4th consultation in as many days. The questions were always the same. How did you feel that day? Any dizziness, electrical shocks, family medical history? She answered honestly because lying seemed pointless. Yes, she'd been tired. 9-hour shift. Yes, she sometimes got static shocks from door panels. No, she didn't think touching metal was a hostile act. Dr. Thess listened with disturbing intensity, scanning Rebecca's hands, her bioelectric signature, her skeletal density. The Quarren made notations that Rebecca couldn't read, occasionally emitting that unsettling laugh. "Am I sick?" Rebecca finally asked. "No, you're structurally human. That's the problem." "That's not an answer." "Give me time, it will be." The restrictions tightened. That afternoon, Rebecca found herself barred from 3 labs she'd maintained for years. "Precautionary," they said, "until we understand the variables." Variables, like she was a chemistry equation instead of a person. Marcus Chen found her in the commissary that evening. The human engineer dropped into the seat across from her, voice low. "You hear about the mining platform." "What mining platform?" "Keldris belt, drill bit sheared clean through yesterday. Impossible failure. Operator was human." Rebecca's stomach dropped. That's coincidence. And the cargo freighter with hull fractures around the human quarters, and the sensor array that died during human maintenance. Marcus leaned forward. "Beck, they're connecting dots." "Dots that don't connect. We've been in space for 30 years. If humans broke things by existing, someone would have noticed." "Maybe they're noticing now." The commissary felt smaller suddenly. Rebecca looked around at the mixed crew, humans sharing tables with Drexians, Rithians, Velians, colleagues, friends, people who'd trusted her to keep their station running. Now they were watching her differently. That night, Rebecca lay in her quarters and pulled up her personnel file. Exemplary service record, 3 commendations, 0 safety violations. She'd built her career on being reliable, thorough, invisible in the best way. One broken test sample was destroying it. Her communicator chimed. A message from Commander Vexith. "Council meeting tomorrow. Your presence required." Not requested, required. Rebecca stared at the ceiling. The station hummed around her. Environmental systems, gravity plating, power conduits, all the technology that made space livable, all the equipment she'd spent years maintaining. All potentially vulnerable to, what? Her touch, her existence. The absurdity should have been funny. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of something vast and dark, waiting to fall. Somewhere in the station, Dr. Thess was laughing again. And somewhere across 400 worlds, 17 billion humans were going about their lives, completely unaware that the galaxy was starting to ask a very dangerous question. What if humanity itself was the contamination? The council chamber held representatives from 9 departments, and every single one of them looked at Rebecca like she might explode. Dr. Thess stood at the holographic display, entirely too pleased with herself. "Before we begin, I want to clarify something. Technician Kale did nothing wrong. Her body, however, is an ongoing materials science catastrophe." "That's not helping," Rebecca muttered. Architected Part 3's escalation with ally introduction and emotional depth. The user wants this to be emotionally powerful and follow a specific structure. Let me continue building the tension and move toward the escalation. Part 3 should show pressure building, introduce supporting characters, and heighten emotional conflict. I need to show how the discovery escalates discrimination. Introduce an ally, maybe Marcus or another character. Build sympathy for human struggle. Keep it at -550 words. Make it emotionally grounded. Thess ignored her. Human biology operates on a principle of controlled failure. Their skeletons fracture constantly. Their immune systems attack their own tissue. Their bioelectric fields fluctuate based on stress, fatigue, and nutrition. This creates localized quantum interference. Chief Engineer Maltress raised a manipulator, meaning any material relying on quantum state bonding becomes vulnerable in human presence. That's approximately 60% of advanced alloys currently in use. The room erupted. Rebecca sat very still, feeling like a specimen under glass. "You're saying humans are incompatible with modern technology," someone shouted. "I'm saying their biology creates complications we didn't anticipate." Medical Officer Thren leaned forward. "How long has this been happening?" "Since humans joined the galactic community, we attributed failures to equipment defects. We never looked for biological causes because, why would we? Species don't spontaneously corrupt quantum states." "Except humans do," Vexith said quietly. Thes smiled that terrible smile, constantly. Rebecca's hands clenched under the table. Around her, the council debated her existence like she wasn't there. Probability weapons, walking entropy generators, structural hazards. Lieutenant Corrin spoke up, her voice tight. "What do we do about the humans already serving on stations and ships?" The silence that followed had weight. "Assessment protocols," Maltress said finally. "Identify high-risk areas. Restrict human access until we understand the scope." "You're talking about segregation," Rebecca said. "We're talking about safety," Maltress countered. "If human presence compromises critical systems, then maybe your critical systems are the problem." Every head turned. Marcus had entered the chamber, flanked by 3 other human crew members. He looked calm, but Rebecca knew that expression. Controlled fury. "Engineer Chen," Vexith said carefully, "this is a closed session." "Not anymore. You're discussing protocols that affect every human on this station. We have a right to be here. We're trying to prevent catastrophic failures." By blaming biology, Marcus stepped forward. "Humans designed ships that work, space stations that function. We've been doing this for decades. If we're such a hazard, explain why human-built systems have lower failure rates than galactic standard." Thes actually looked interested. "Continue." "Human spacecraft have triple redundancy, modular components, over-engineered safety margins. We thought other species were cutting corners. Turns out we were compensating for problems we didn't even know we had." The room went quiet. "You're suggesting," Thes said slowly, "that human engineering inherently accounts for quantum interference." "I'm suggesting that maybe humans aren't the flaw. Maybe the rest of you built everything too perfectly." Rebecca felt something shift. Not hope, not quite, but the smallest crack in the certainty that she was the problem. Vexith studied Marcus for a long moment. "We'll review human engineering standards, but until then, restrictions remain in place." "For how long?" "Until we have answers." As the council dispersed, Marcus caught Rebecca's arm. "You okay?" "They're going to quarantine us," she whispered. "Not today maybe, but eventually. Then we make sure that doesn't happen." Rebecca looked at her fellow humans. 4 people against a galaxy that suddenly saw them as dangerous. The odds were terrible. But humans had beaten worse. The restrictions started small. Humans barred from handling certain materials, required supervision in critical systems. "Temporary measures," they said, "just until we understand the variables." Rebecca lost access to 2 more labs. Marcus was pulled from hull maintenance. Across the station, humans found themselves reassigned, restricted, watched. It took 6 days for someone to call them contaminated. The word spread like radiation, not to their faces, never that direct, but in reports, in safety briefings, in the careful distance other species suddenly maintained. Contamination protocol, biological interference, structural risk. Rebecca stood in the observation deck, watching the stars, and felt something inside her crack. "I've worked here 3 years," she said quietly. Marcus stood beside her, equally hollow. 3 years, never failed a safety check, never damaged equipment, and now I'm a hazard because I exist. It's not personal. It's entirely personal. They're not restricting jobs or protocols. They're restricting us. A message chimed on her communicator. Rebecca didn't need to read it to know what it said. More limitations. More places she couldn't go. More ways to make her feel like a disease. She thought about her father's knees giving out at 40, her mother's anemia, the constant, grinding maintenance their bodies required just to function. Human resilience, they called it, the ability to keep going when everything hurt. Maybe that's all they'd ever be, bodies that broke, systems that failed. The door cycled open. Dr. Thess entered, her breathing apparatus clicking rapidly, the Quarren equivalent of agitation. "I need to show you something," she said. "More evidence that we're walking disasters. Evidence that you're extraordinary." Thess pulled up a holographic display. "I've been reviewing historical data. Every species in the galactic community evolved stable molecular structures. Calcium that stays calcium, iron properly sequestered, electrical systems in equilibrium. We know we're different." "Different?" Thess laughed. "You're impossible. Your bodies shouldn't work. Every system is in perpetual crisis management. Your bones constantly fracturing and rebuilding. Your immune cells waging war on themselves. Your bioelectric field chaos incarnate. Is there a point to this?" "The point," Thess said, her voice dropping, "is that you made it to space anyway. You built ships while your skeletons betrayed you. You designed quantum computers while generating quantum interference. You created functioning technology despite being biologically incompatible with it." She zoomed in on a schematic of human spacecraft design. Triple redundancy, over-engineered safety margins, modular components. You didn't build this way because you're paranoid. You built it because you had to, because things kept breaking and you adapted. Rebecca stared at the display. "So what?" "So maybe the galaxy has been building wrong this entire time. Maybe efficiency isn't strength. Maybe your species learned something the rest of us never had to. That failure is inevitable. That survival requires planning for it." Marcus stepped closer to the hologram. "Are you saying human engineering is better?" "I'm saying it's more honest. The galaxy spent millennia perfecting materials that never fail. You spent millennia working around the fact that everything fails eventually." Thess met Rebecca's eyes. "The question is whether anyone will listen." The observation deck fell silent. Outside, Station Apollon continued its careful rotation. Humans and aliens working together, except now one group was labeled dangerous and the other was convinced they were right to fear. Rebecca thought about every broken bone that healed stronger, every immune response that left her body prepared for the next threat, every adaptation carved from failure. "They won't listen," she said quietly, "not unless we make them." "And how do you do that?" Rebecca looked at Marcus, then at the stars beyond the glass, at the vast, efficient galaxy that had everything figured out, that had built perfect systems for perfect species, that had never learned what humans knew in their breaking bones. Nothing perfect survives contact with reality. We show them what happens when perfect isn't enough. Rebecca spent the next 48 hours in the station archives, pulling records that most crew members never looked at twice. Maintenance logs, failure reports, system redundancies activated, every time something went wrong and was quietly fixed. The pattern was undeniable once you knew to look for it. "Human sections have 18% fewer critical failures," Marcus said, scrolling through his own findings. "I thought we were just better at our jobs." "We are, just not the way we thought." Rebecca highlighted another report. "Environmental system backup activated in human quarters 7 times last year. Galactic standard quarters, 0. Because their systems don't fail." "No, because their systems don't have backups. When they fail, it's catastrophic." They worked through the night, building a case from data everyone had seen but nobody had connected. Each human-occupied zone told the same story: more redundancy, more repairs, more small failures that never escalated because someone had planned for them. The irony was almost beautiful. Dr. Thess found them at 0300 hours, surrounded by holographic displays and empty coffee containers. "You look terrible," she observed. "We look right," Rebecca countered. "Look at this." She pulled up a comparison chart. Sector 7, mixed crew, human-designed systems in the human sections, galactic standard everywhere else. Guess which areas have better long-term stability? Thess studied the data, her breathing apparatus clicking faster. The human sections show constant minor failures, followed by immediate repairs and strengthened redundancies. Meanwhile, the perfect sections run flawlessly until, Rebecca highlighted 3 timestamps. Catastrophic failure, no warning, no backup. "Because they built systems that never fail," Marcus said, "so they never planned for failure. Whereas humans," Thess finished slowly, "built systems that assume failure." "Not assume, except there's a difference." Rebecca felt something like hope flickering. "Every human ship has redundant life support because we know it might fail. Every human station has modular components because we know things break. We're not paranoid, we're experienced." Marcus pulled up another file. "I cross-referenced materials failures over the past 30 years. Vidian steel, compressed nanocarbon, quantum-bonded alloys. Every impossible failure had human proximity, but also," he highlighted the pattern, "every failure occurred in non-redundant systems." "Human-built systems using the same materials show stress," Rebecca continued, "but not catastrophic failure, because we built them expecting stress." Thess was silent for a long moment. Then she started laughing, that disturbing, delighted sound. "You're saying the solution to quantum interference is engineering philosophy." "We're saying maybe our biology forced us to solve a problem the galaxy doesn't know it has," Rebecca said. "Things break. Reality is messy. Entropy is inevitable. You can build perfect systems that shatter when conditions aren't perfect, or you can build imperfect systems that survive imperfect conditions." "The galaxy won't want to hear this," Thess warned. "You're suggesting they rebuild everything based on human principles." "No," Rebecca felt certainty settling in her chest. "We're suggesting they stop treating human engineering like a compromise and start seeing it as the actual solution." Marcus stood. "The council meets again tomorrow. They're voting on permanent human restrictions." "Then we present this before they vote." "They won't listen." "They will if we make it impossible not to." Rebecca began organizing the data into a presentation. "Dr. Thess, I need your analysis of quantum interference. Marcus, pull every engineering comparison you can find. We're going to show them that the humans they're trying to segregate have been holding this station together the entire time. And if they don't believe us..." Rebecca thought about her body, fracturing and healing, fighting and adapting, breaking down and building back stronger. Thought about every human ship still flying, every station still functioning, every system that survived because someone had planned for failure. "Then we demonstrate it," she said quietly. "We show them what happens when you remove human redundancy from critical systems." "That's dangerous," Thess warned. "So is segregating 17 billion people based on fear." The archives hummed around them. Outside, Station Apollon rotated through artificial night, and across 400 worlds, humans slept and worked and lived, completely unaware that their existence was being debated. But Rebecca was done being evidence in someone else's investigation. It was time to be the solution. The council chamber filled quickly. Word had spread that humans were presenting evidence before the restriction vote. Rebecca recognized curiosity when she saw it, and underneath, the careful wariness of people expecting to be vindicated. Commander Vexith called the session to order. Technician Kale, Engineer Chen, you requested this time. We did. Rebecca activated the holographic display. The Council believes humans are a structural hazard. We're here to show you why that's incomplete. Incomplete, Chief Engineer Maltrese's voice held skepticism. The data is clear. Human bioelectric fields corrupt quantum states. Correct, and yet, Marcus pulled up the failure analysis. Human-occupied zones show higher system stability than galactic standard sections. Explain that. The room murmured. Maltrese leaned forward. Your data source. Station maintenance logs, 30 years of records. Feel free to verify. Rebecca highlighted the comparisons. Human sections average 18% fewer critical failures, not because we don't affect materials, we do, but because we built expecting it. Dr. Thess stepped forward. I've reviewed their analysis. It's sound. Human engineering incorporates redundancy at every level. When quantum interference destabilizes a primary system, backup systems engage. Galactic standard design assumes stability, so failures are catastrophic when they occur. You're suggesting we rebuild based on human philosophy. Someone sounded offended. We're suggesting you already do in every human-occupied space. Marcus brought up ship schematics. Human vessels have triple redundant life support. Why? Because we know it might fail. Galactic Standard has single systems rated to never fail, until they do. Rebecca felt the room's attention shifting, not convinced yet but listening. The Vidian steel sample that shattered, she continued, was in a single-point test rig. No backup support, no tolerance for variance. Put that same sample in human-designed equipment with distributed load systems, and it would have held. You're speculating, Maltrese said. Then let's test it, Rebecca's heart hammered. Give us a Vidian steel sample. Let us install it in a human-designed test rig. If it fails, you have your proof humans are too dangerous. If it holds, maybe you consider that your perfect systems are actually fragile. The silence was absolute. Vexith's primary eyes narrowed. That's a substantial risk. Smaller than segregating 17 billion people without understanding why they survived this long. Lieutenant Corrin spoke up. What do you need? Access to Lab 7, standard human engineering components, 24 hours. The council conferred in low voices. Rebecca watched them debate her species' worth, fought to keep her expression neutral. Beside her, Marcus's jaw was tight. Finally, Vexith nodded. Approved, but under supervision if there's any sign of danger. We stop immediately, Rebecca agreed. That's what humans do. We see problems coming and we stop before they escalate. The council adjourned. As crew members filed out, Dr. Thess approached. That was either brilliant or career-ending. Probably both. Rebecca's hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fatting. But they were going to vote us out anyway. At least this way we fight. Marcus pulled up requisition forms. I'll get the components. You design the rig. Make it obvious, Thess advised. Every redundancy visible, every backup system clear. You're not just proving it works, you're showing them why. 20 hours later, Rebecca stood in Lab 7 looking at what she'd built. Not elegant, not efficient, just honest. The test rig distributed load across 4 support points instead of 1. Backup sensors monitored each point independently. Safety shutoffs at 3 threshold levels. Modular components that could be isolated if they failed. It looked like every human-built system she'd ever maintained. Complicated, over-prepared, and completely unglamorous. It's perfect, Marcus said. It's paranoid. Same thing. The Vidian steel sample sat in the center, the galaxy's strongest alloy, waiting to prove whether human engineering was adaptation or just expensive paranoia. Commander Vexith entered with half the senior staff. Are you ready? Rebecca thought about her father's failing knees. her mother's constant fatigue. Every human body that broke and healed, teaching their species that failure was inevitable and survival meant planning for it. Yes, sir. Let's see what happens when you build for reality instead of perfection. She activated the test sequence. And 17 billion humans held their breath without knowing why. The test chamber hummed as pressure built. Rebecca stood at the observation window, watching the Vidian steel sample take the load. Around her, the council watched in tense silence. 20% of maximum load, Marcus called out. All support points distributing evenly, no stress anomalies. The holographic display showed the sample's molecular structure, quantum bonds flickering, destabilizing slightly as Rebecca's bioelectric field interfered. But the distributed load system compensated, shifting pressure away from weakened points. 40%, Marcus continued. Backup sensors detecting minor fluctuations, system adjusting. Chief Engineer Maltress leaned closer. It's adapting. That's the point, Rebecca said quietly. Human bodies adapt constantly. We built our technology to do the same. The pressure climbed. 60%, the threshold where the original sample had shattered. Rebecca's pulse hammered. If this failed, every argument collapsed. If it failed, humans would be confirmed as hazards. The metal held. 65%, Marcus's voice was steady. Structural integrity maintained. Maltress turned to Dr. Thess. Explain what we're seeing. Human bioelectric interference is still occurring, Thess said, highlighting the quantum fluctuations. The bonds are destabilizing exactly as predicted, but watch the load distribution. The display showed pressure flowing away from weakened areas, redirecting through backup support points. When one section showed stress, the system compensated automatically. It's failing, someone whispered. No, Vexith said slowly. It's failing and recovering continuously. Rebecca felt vindication rising. That's how human bodies work. Constant micro-failures that trigger immediate adaptation. We built our technology to mirror it. 70% load, Marcus reported, now exceeding the original test parameters. The room erupted in murmurs. The sample that had shattered at 62% was now holding at 70% and climbing. Enough, Maltress said. We've seen sufficient data. Marcus shut down the test sequence. The pressure released gradually. Another human design choice, Rebecca noted, never shocked the system. The Vidian steel sample sat intact in its distributed rig, completely undamaged. It held, Corin said, voice filled with something like wonder. It failed constantly, Thess corrected, and that's exactly why it survived. The human-designed system expected failure, planned for it, compensated in real time. Maltress studied the data streams. This changes everything. Does it? Rebecca stepped forward. Or does it confirm what humans have been showing you for 30 years? We don't build perfect systems. We build honest ones. Your bodies destabilize materials, Maltress said carefully. That's still a problem. No, that's a reality. The problem was building systems that can't handle reality. Marcus pulled up the comparison data. Every catastrophic failure in galactic standard equipment shares the same pattern. No redundancy. When something went wrong, there was no backup, no adaptation. Rebecca felt the momentum shifting. You built a galaxy based on materials that never fail. We built a civilization based on the certainty that everything fails eventually. Guess which philosophy survives contact with actual conditions? Vexith's expression was unreadable. You're suggesting we rebuild infrastructure across 400 worlds based on human engineering principles. We're suggesting you stop treating human design as compensation for biological flaws and start recognizing it as advanced engineering philosophy. Rebecca met his eyes. Our bodies taught us something valuable. Perfection is fragile. Resilience requires accepting imperfection and planning for it. The council chamber fell silent. Outside, Station Apollon continued its rotation, humans and aliens working side by side, maintaining systems, conducting research, living together. "I need time to consider this," Maltress said finally. "How much time?" Marcus asked. "The restriction vote is scheduled for tomorrow." "Then we postpone it," Vexith straightened, "until we fully understand the implications of what we've seen today." It wasn't victory, not quite, but it was the crack in certainty that Rebecca had fought for. As the council dispersed, Dr. Thess approached. "You did well. We proved one test case. You proved that human weakness is actually sophisticated crisis management. That's more significant than you realize." Thess's breathing apparatus clicked, Quarren laughter. "The galaxy spent millennia eliminating failure from our systems. Humanity spent millennia learning to live with it. Your way is harder, but it's also more honest." Rebecca looked through the observation window at the Vidian steel sample. The galaxy's strongest alloy, held intact not by perfection, but by acknowledging its vulnerability. Like human bones, like human immune systems, like the species that had made it to the stars while constantly breaking and constantly healing. "We're not done yet," she said quietly. "No," Thess agreed, "but you've started something, and once started, truth tends to spread." That night, Rebecca sent a message to every human-occupied station, ship, and colony. Not orders, not instructions, just data. Just the truth about what humans had built and why it worked. Across 400 worlds, 17 billion people received it and began to understand their strength. 3 months later, Rebecca stood in the council chamber again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Commander Vexith called the assembly to order. Representatives from 12 sectors filled the room, engineers, scientists, military commanders, all here to discuss the Human Engineering Initiative. "We've completed comprehensive testing," Chief Engineer Maltress began. His earlier skepticism had evolved into something like respect. "Human-designed systems show superior long-term stability in variable conditions. The redundancy we considered inefficient is actually adaptive resilience." Holographic displays showed the data. Human ships lasting longer, human stations requiring less critical maintenance, human-occupied zones weathering equipment failures that would have crippled galactic standard facilities. "The recommendation," Vexith prompted. "Adopt human engineering principles for all new construction. Retrofit existing critical systems with distributed load architectures and redundant backups." Maltress pulled up a schematic. "We're calling it adaptive resilience design. Essentially, we build expecting things to go wrong." "That's a significant philosophical shift," someone observed. "It's a necessary one," Dr. Thess said. She'd become an unexpected advocate, her Quarren fascination with human impossibility transforming into scientific admiration. "For millennia, we optimized for perfection. Humans optimized for survival. Reality favors the latter." Lieutenant Quarren stood. "We're also recommending policy changes regarding human crew. The restrictions implemented 3 months ago are being formally rescinded. Human bioelectric interference is no longer classified as a hazard but as a design consideration." Rebecca felt something tight in her chest finally release. Marcus leaned over. "We won," he whispered. "Not yet," she murmured back. Vexith turned to her. "Technician Kale, you initiated this investigation. Your thoughts?" Rebecca stood, aware of every eye in the chamber. 3 months ago you called us contamination. Today you're adopting our engineering. That's progress, but it's not enough." The room went quiet. "For 30 years humans have been in space. We've built ships, stations, colonies. We've maintained your equipment, operated your systems, lived alongside you. And we never mentioned that our bodies were constantly breaking, our bones fracturing, our immune systems attacking ourselves. You know why?" She looked around the chamber. Because we thought it was normal. We thought every species rebuilt themselves daily. We thought resilience was universal. Turns out it's uniquely human. Rebecca felt her voice strengthen. Our bodies fail, constantly. That's not a flaw, that's our fundamental nature. And instead of letting it destroy us, we learn to rebuild stronger. Every broken bone heals denser. Every immune response trains better defense. Every adaptation carved from failure. She pulled up the comparison data one more time. You built a galaxy on materials that never break. We built a civilization on certainty that everything breaks eventually. Your way works until reality intrudes. Our way expects reality. So yes, adopt our engineering. Build redundancy into your systems. Plan for failure. But understand what you're really doing. You're accepting a truth we learned in our bones. Perfection is fiction. Strength is adaptation. Survival is accepting that nothing lasts forever and building anyway. The silence that followed felt different, not uncertain, contemplative. Maltress spoke first. Your perspective is noted and adopted. Motion to formalize the Human Engineering Initiative, Corin said. All in favor. The votes came quickly, unanimous. Vexith stood. Let the record show that as of today, human engineering principles are recognized as galactic standard for adaptive systems. The species we once questioned is now the foundation of our future infrastructure. He looked at Rebecca. Thank you, Technician Kale, for breaking what needed to break. Later in the commissary, Rebecca sat with Marcus and a dozen other human crew members. The news had spread. Across 400 worlds, humans were reading the Council's decision, understanding for the first time that their constant battle against their own biology had taught them something the galaxy desperately needed. To broken bones, Marcus raised his coffee, and the engineers who learned from them. To immune systems that never quit fighting, another human added. To bodies that betray us, Rebecca said quietly, and teach us to rebuild stronger. They drank to that, to failure and adaptation, to weakness that became strength through acceptance. Through the commissary windows, Station Apollon continued its rotation. Human and alien crew working together, but now with understanding. The humans weren't contamination or hazards or biological weapons. They were teachers. Dr. Thess found Rebecca later, her breathing apparatus clicking with amusement. I've been asked to establish a xenobiology institute dedicated to studying adaptive resilience. They want humans involved. We're not specimens. No, you're consultants. The galaxy wants to learn what you learned, how to survive when everything fails. Rebecca thought about her father's knees, her mother's anemia, the constant, grinding maintenance their bodies required. Thought about 17 billion humans who'd made it to the stars while their skeletons fractured and their cells waged war. Tell them the truth, she said. We didn't learn resilience. We're built from it. Every human body is a lesson in adapting to failure. You can't study that. You have to live it. Then we'll learn to live it, Thess said simply. Because you've shown us that perfection isn't strength. Endurance is. That night, Rebecca stood in the observation deck where this had started, where a piece of Vidian steel had shattered and changed everything. She thought about Commander Vexith's words, for breaking what needed to break. The galaxy's strongest alloy had failed. And in failing, it had revealed a deeper truth. Nothing is truly strong until it learns to survive its own weaknesses. Humans had learned that in their bones, literally. Now the galaxy would learn it in their systems, their ships, their stations. They'd build for failure because humans had proven that planning for weakness was the only way to achieve lasting strength. Rebecca touched the observation window. Outside, the stars turned in their endless dance. Somewhere out there, 17 billion humans were fracturing and healing, breaking and rebuilding, introducing entropy into every perfect system they encountered. And for the first time in galactic history, everyone understood. That wasn't contamination. That was hope. Because in a universe where entropy was inevitable, the species that had learned to survive it, even thrive within it, weren't the problem. They were the solution. And they were made of breaking bones, aggressive immune systems, and bioelectric chaos. Made of failure. Made of resilience. Made of something the galaxy had forgotten to value. The strength that comes from accepting you're fragile and building anyway. Human. End.